Hello, it's Neil Romanek from AU, and welcome to the Content and IP Defense Summit 2. It's the second Content and IP Defense Summit. We had one last year where we covered issues of piracy, content authenticity, and AI. This year, we're here to talk about production and post-production and how to secure your files in your production workflow and how to keep your content safe and how to engender confidence in your customers who may not know much about security. It's your job to know. It's your job to help them have confidence that their content is not going to get into the wrong hands. So, Carrie, I guess let's start with you and the kind of the overview of where we are, kind of the state of security in the industry. Can you talk about what the TPN is doing, and then also the report, the STAR report that you put out just a couple months ago in April, was it?
Yeah, exactly. April 28th, so right after NAB. So for those people who don't know much about TPN, as I mentioned, wholly owned nonprofit under the Motion Picture Association. And our whole mission is to help keep content secure. So we do that through strengthening content security across the industry supply chain. So think about everything from you have an idea about content or building a facility or a part of the media and entertainment ecosystem, all the way through delivery, library servicing, the whole gamut of media and entertainment. And we do that through increasing awareness about how to improve your security preparedness and enhancing efficiency for our members to reduce the duplicative efforts of doing security assessments. We have close to 2,000 service provider members, and we cover the globe, over 60 countries. All the major studios and streamers are our content owner members. And then we have well over 65 TPN certified assessors that have met the qualifications to be able to evaluate how a company is doing on their content security compliance against those best practices. And as part of that work, we actually took a look this last year at what kind of results we were seeing from these security assessments. So we went through and reviewed the information, and there were some really clear areas of challenge in this space that the industry is really struggling with. And for the first time, we were able to look at it based on data points rather than taking a survey. So none of what is here for most security professionals is surprising. But this is the first time where we've been able to correlate it directly to the data out of assessments. And the largest security gaps sit in operational technical controls. So it's really, really difficult for companies and participants to be able to sustain continuously managed controls. They do a really great job at, okay, I need to have potentially a business continuity plan. So they create it, but then maybe they don't act against the areas that are outlined in that business continuity plan. So defining policies, easy, but maintaining them and being vigilant around that and having the operational exercise around continually making sure you're keeping up to pace is really hard. So vulnerability management, things like patching cadence and scanning coverage, to see where you are, where new threats are. Over 46% are non-compliant. Cryptography. There's a lot of inconsistency around encryption in transit and at rest, and weak key management practices. And then some of the things that we find, like that nowadays we hear about it all the time. Things like multi-factor authentication. Many of the challenges we see are in like incomplete MFA implementation, making sure passwords are being checked and controlled and changed. And endpoint hardening is another area. So not having really good endpoint protection. And what we've found, and we're going to talk about this a lot today with all the experts that are part of this, is everything old is new again. Most threats are coming. They're trying to find the path of least resistance. They're not looking to do something out of, Mission Impossible and, breaking into your facility, although that does happen. Um, but it's really the simple things and finding a place where they can find a vulnerable employee through a phishing attack or something of that nature, and that's how they get in. The other thing we're finding, which was really challenging, and we're trying to work to see how we can help people, move forward a bit faster, is that companies will go through, do these assessments, and then 70% of the security gaps that they find, areas where they're non-compliant, remain unresolved. So there could be a lot of reasons why they're not actually becoming compliant. Sometimes they don't know where to start. Companies don't know where to start. Or it's financial. That's a big challenge doing these types of, sometimes this work is expensive to do. And maybe they don't have the subject matter expertise, or if it's a large company, it could be something that, it's not part of their roadmap immediately. And it's companies with, wide diverse locations and large numbers of employees. And so to actually implement against that takes a lot of time. It's can be something that even if they choose to remediate, it's really slow. It takes a long time for those fixes to get done. And it cuts across all different geographic locations around the globe. And it cuts across all levels, from size and revenue as well. So we found actually, if you look at Asia Pacific and the US and Canada, they actually have the largest area of where they've quote unquote refused to actually do the remediation for many different reasons. And if they do choose to remediate, actually the fastest areas, the fastest geographic location to do the remediations is actually in Asia Pacific. You'd think a small company or a medium-sized company would be slower to remediate. Well, ironically, again, it's those bigger companies that take the longest amount of time to remediate. And also those companies of large size seem to take a lot of time to remediate. So with that, we've realized, okay, what do we need to do as TPN and as an industry to help? Because the challenge for service providers is there's limited availability. The threats are surging. If you look at upcoming threats like Mythos, the AI ability to find these vulnerabilities is evolving faster than our current pace of fixing them. When you talk to some of the major companies that are focused on cybersecurity, it used to be if there was a 0 day or if there was a challenge, you had time. There's no time anymore to wait because once a vulnerability is found, it's being exploited, which puts us all at risk. So we're in a point where being fully compliant and secure is a moving target. And the constant workload, fragmented systems, stretched resources, and these threats moving faster than the fixes can happen are creating a lot of pressure for our industry to be able to, fight against these attacks. So we're launching, based on the STAR report, we're launching a public service campaign, and we're trying to distill this down to a way so that companies have a better chance of being successful. So 5 priority actions that we're highlighting are you need to make security a daily practice. This is not you do it once and forget it. You've got to do it continuously. You have to try to fix as many of those technical gaps early as you possibly can. It's critical to lock down identity and access management. It's super, super important because that's your first line of defense. That's where we talked about multi-factor authentication and endpoint protection and passwords. And then holding your vendor partners accountable. So if I'm a production, making sure, hey, am I asking the question of, well, how are you making sure that when I bring you my dailies, that they're safe? How are you looking at understanding where the challenges are around security? And then when you find these gaps, responding as quickly as possible. So you'll see coming, we're going to launch at IBC a new campaign called Fix It or Risk It. That's going to include a free toolkit, which is going to be resources anyone can access for free. And it helps you have an immediate impact on your content security posture. Again, no matter where you sit in this, the media supply chain. And remember, content is only as secure as your weakest link. So we want to get the information out to as many people as possible. This is regardless of, you don't have to be a TPN member for this. This is really an industry campaign that we're pushing out with many, many partners. And when you have this information, if you see someone who needs it, making sure that they're aware of it too, because the more companies and the more participants that are aware, the more successful that we'll all be as an industry. In the meantime, we have many of these free resources already available on TPN. So near the end, I can give you the information, and you can certainly get access to quite a bit of it. But that's kind of where the industry stands at the moment. We're going to talk a lot more about this, but that's the data. Mm-hmm. So now we need to all work together to figure out how we're going to support one another to actually make an impact so that the industry is secure as possible.
Thank you for that. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I always think of like a studio, and a studio, for decades, well, for a century or so, you think of a studio as a fortress. It's like you've got gates, you check everybody that goes in and out, and you would think that there's already this this kind of ethos around security and safety and protecting what we do kind of baked in. But I think maybe for a lot of business, as things get digitized, there was there's slow response time, or it becomes quite confusing, or you need new sets of talents to come in. But yeah, it's a really interesting challenge, this transition point. Chris, maybe talk about Content Vault and that issue of like how you guys have had the experiences you've had with customers, and kind of what that journey of security has been. Because as we've said, and as we were talking about before, needing to have secure certain types of content and make sure nobody sees that until you want them to see that is part of the entertainment business.
Well, yeah, thank you, and thank you for that background, Carrie. That was really interesting. I mean, I've been in this industry for over 25 years. I started in the days of tapes being moved around, and in some ways, tapes were sort of more secure than the way people move content around now. And I think that goes to what Neil just said as well. We see and have seen from the sort of pre-production, as you say, dailies coming over. We do a lot of work in quiz shows, where in America it's a federal crime to cheat a quiz show, to rig a quiz show. So there has to be an enormous amount of security around the questions that go into that show, because if they get out and then S&P find that there's an issue, then that production can be sued. So it's not just losing the rushes or the end product. There's actually, there are people who's got jail time on the line if this material gets out. So we've started a number of the shows that Ionico works for and some of the bigger networks have started using Content Vault to move their question data, graphics data around.
And Ionico is, I'm sorry, can you say who
yeah, sorry, I mentioned that.
And the relationship between
company of Content Vault. And the Ionico's experience and our chief executive Simon's experience in the industry, along with mine and the rest of the team, is what led to us developing Content Vault as a product, because we see so many times that whether it's a rights fix, you've bought a TV series from someone and they send you a link to it online, and it's just sort of online and you download it. And if I send that link to you, Neil, you could download it. You're only as secure as the person you send content to. And so we looked at it and said, well, why don't we secure the content itself so it can't go anywhere else? So the way, and not a sales pitch, just explaining the way we work, is we tie user and MFA, obviously it included username, password, credentials, but to technical metadata from a specific machine. Now that machine could be an edit. you could send rushes to an edit that only that edit could open those rushes. And we've got a number of things in our sort of product roadmap. That could be a projector in a cinema. You could send a file to a specific projector, and only that projector can error. So you're just taking opportunities for this content to go astray out of the mix. There's people. I've seen so many times people sharing a Vimeo link with a password so that you can see content or see rushes and see dailies. I can see Tyler grimacing at that, but it happens all the time. People are still doing this, and as Carrie says, the big thing is about education to stop this. And you're right. A lot of people are like, oh well, that hasn't happened to us, but we're starting to see some movement in people realizing this isn't causing problems in our workflow. It isn't slowing things up. Or if it is, it's a tiny amount, and the incremental amount that shows it up is massively offset by the opportunity of added security. So a tiny inconvenience is nothing when you've just lost the rushes for your new film, or they've gone out online and someone has now stuck it up all over the web, and it's just gone. So I think, as Kerry said, it's about education, but it's about securing. It's about understanding the value of your assets, whether that's question data on a game show, whether that's dailies from a shoot, or whether that's, you talked about just on production. A lot of my background in the time before I was with Ionico was working on TV channels. I've launched 30 or 40 TV channels. And that's another area we just see as I said, people sending you a link to download content. And also talk about the link thing. Content, people think it's secure because it's up on an S3 bucket. No, not disparaging S3 or any other cloud service provider, but people think that content's good. But if some reason, if it's Dropbox or on a cloud server and it gets taken down, or someone pulls that content down, if the content itself isn't locked, they can just do whatever they want with it. But if you upload content that is secured to your device onto a cloud server because you want to clear storage up, and then you can pull it back down. If anyone else pulled it back down, they couldn't do it. It's completely locked up. You have to be on that device, and then you can decrypt it, and then you can do whatever you want to with it. But and also it's not just media. And I think before the session I was talking with Sean about being in the police force. It's not just the media that uses AV now. There's interviews for the police. There's CCTV camera footage that people want to secure, and then if you go outside, there's PDF files, there's documents that we want to secure, and we're looking at it very much from a media perspective, of course, because that's what all of our backgrounds is. But I think it's a best practices perspective across all industries, and we all just need to work out what the best practice is within our industry, and there'll be a lot of crossover with others as well.
Gary, actually, I think that may be interesting to hearing like your experience as well with that, having worked not just in the film industry or the media industry, content industry, but like how that has evolved over time and across industries. And I think Sean will talk about some of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, firstly, touching on what Carrie said, it is all about the basics. Don't forget the basics. It's still old-fashioned fraud, criminal damage, and theft. That's it. It's just being done over a computer. So that's the first thing. It's the basics. Touching on also what you said earlier, Neil, is about in the old days, if you wanted to go and get some sensitive HR files, you had to walk down the management corridor, knock on a bunch of scary doors, go through an office into the HR department, and talk to the scary HR lady. And she knew exactly who you are. She knew exactly what you were allowed to see or not see. If you wanted to take something away from that office, you had to use the only photocopier that was in the building, that was in the HR office. So you had a whole bunch of controls without realizing it. There were a whole bunch of controls in there that we always used to have and we had to step over that are now gone because we've moved into this online world. And unless people lock things down properly and understand, in answer to what Chris said about the value of data, if you work for Rolls-Royce and you've got this great big shiny engine that's cost you billions of pounds to develop, you know how much it costs. No one really gets how much data is worth now. And that's the biggest thing. I just wanted to cover off that. But what's striking to me is it's the speed at which cybercrime is happening now, and it's the professionalism of the people involved. It is organised crime. It's no longer the spotty teenager sat in a darkened room at 3 o'clock in the morning in his underpants. It is. We are talking organised crime here. So they are uber professional, and it's something like, I think it's something like $11 trillion is the value of that industry last year in the cybercrime industry. So it's huge. So what are we seeing? So attackers are moving faster. Initial access to major compromise is in a matter of hours. They are stealing the data before they encrypt it, which is a bit of a change as to how things were previously. And we're using valid credentials. They're no longer using sophisticated tools to try and crack passwords and all that kind of stuff. They're getting these valid credentials from the dark web and from various other places. So they're actually logging in as opposed to trying to break in. So that old thing around hackers breaking in is becoming a little bit outdated. The next kind of theme is how AI is changing the economics of crime. It's not because attackers are becoming more sophisticated. It's because AI is lowering the barrier to use these tools. So it's becoming really easy for people to perform really sophisticated attacks now. The other thing to also consider is geopolitics. It's bleeding into cyber at the moment. We've got that matches the geopolitical tensions. We've got the whole Ukraine issue. Now, there's been a cyber war going on with Russia for years, since back to 2015. Obviously, with the Ukraine conflict, it's stepped up. We've got China, and Taiwan, which is another big threat point. You've then got the Middle East. There's the stuff that's going on now. The Iranians are very good at cyber. And all of this is coming into the mix now with everything that's going on in the world. It's not just about boots on the ground and guns and bullets. It's cyber. If you take us out in the cyber world, that's it. It's effectively game over. So that's one of the big things. The other consequence of what's changed are things. It's not just about technical recovery now. Go back even a couple of years. If you got hit with a ransomware attack, for example, you focused entirely on the technical recovery from that. However, you can't do that now. You've now got to look at the same time. You've got to be looking at your recovery. At the same time as you're dealing with the incident, you need to be planning for recovery at the same time. We need to talk about governance, regulatory scrutiny, communications. It's relatively simple to recover from a data breach or a ransomware attack, but if you get the comms wrong, you're screwed. You've got to get that messaging out right, because and the other thing is, if you don't fill that vacuum in the messaging, someone else will fill it for you. The trolls will fill it, the media will fill it, your competitors will fill it. So you need to get out there and start managing that message. And then also it's the legal exposure. You need to be getting legal teams on board at exactly the same time as this is all kicking off, because you need to take into account the geographic boundaries, where your data is sitting, where it's resident, where it's going to, who might be impacted. So there's a whole bunch of other things going on. And I really must emphasize that as soon as you jump on and you start dealing with an incident, you need to be thinking about the legal context also at the same time, which is talking about preservation of evidence. Because what you need to do, the first thing that the Information Commissioner will ask, or any of these other regulated bodies, is what systems did you have in place? What protections did you have in place? What did you do to recover from this? And what data was impacted? And they will want to know who those people were, who those victims were, and all that kind of stuff. You also need to be telling the victims also. So there's a whole host of stuff that we're seeing that are coming into this. Again, picking on what Carrie said, it's about compromises of identity, but one of the biggest things you need to also think about is third parties, your supply chain. You may well have ISO 27001 or Cyber Essentials or all these other different frameworks in place to protect the business. What are your third parties doing with your data? How can you get assurance from that? Because most of the breaches that I'm dealing with currently, and my colleagues are dealing with all that kind of stuff, it's not the client themselves. It's the third parties that have got access to their data. They're doing the processing, they're doing the retrievals, they're doing the storage. If they're getting it wrong, doesn't matter what you're doing. You're still party to fines, litigation, and all the rest of it. So that's my take.
Thanks. That is a perfect, I think, intro to Sean, who will be kind of jumping on that law enforcement and cyber piece, and we can at the end loop back around here to continue some more of this discussion.